At the end of the day, it's all about users, customers, and revenue. Triple your growth and turn your company into a sales machine, no matter the crisis. Learn how to create successful marketing and sales strategies on and offline. And learn the latest trends, hacks, tips, and tricks in the world of KPIs and metrics, covered in this program block. Expect hard facts, first-hand advice, and nothing but the latest techniques.
Good morning, lovely Podim participants. I hope you guys slept well and you are ready for yet another exciting Growth Academy session today. My name is Stoyan and I'm going to be your host of the Studio 3, and I'm super excited because this block is going to be about entrepreneurship and innovation. I know you're going to have a lot of fun. You're going to learn some practical strategies, actionable advice, but let's not waste any time and see who is going to be the first speaker today. Zoltan Vardy, ladies and gentlemen. Zoltan is a business growth mentor, trainer, and speaker who helps entrepreneurs find their focus and accelerate their business growth, building on a 30-year career in global business. These guys have been all around the place, supporting entrepreneurs, investing in entrepreneurs, and making a difference in the ecosystem. Great to have you, Zoltan. How are you today?
Great. It's great to be here. I wish I could be there in person.
I know. I wish you could be here in person too. Zoltan, did you have your morning coffee?
I'm not a big coffee drinker, so I've just energized myself for hopefully it will be a valuable lesson or a session for the viewers out there.
Is that your first Podim event?
It is my first Podim event. Yes, it is.
Hopefully not the last. Hopefully not the last.
Absolutely, I hope so.
Great, well. Zoltan, the stage is yours. I can't wait to hear your keynote.
Great. Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. As I was preparing for today's presentation, I remember I was reminded of a very specific period of time in my life back in September of 2016. I remember it was a Wednesday afternoon and I was sitting in my garden at home having a beer, and I was actually considering a very important decision. You see, I had to decide whether or not I would leave a job I had started only 3 days before. You heard it right, 3 days. And it wasn't only the timing, but actually it was the context of the decision that made it so difficult. You see, about 6 months before this particular moment, I was actually a pretty senior executive in a global media company at NBC Universal. I was senior vice president of global ad sales and based in London. And like most other senior executives in these type of roles, I spent 6 to 8 months of my time traveling and basically doing one thing, and that's trying to predict the future. Now, in big companies, process is known as planning. And let me tell you, we had a plan for everything. I mean, a long-term plan, an annual plan, a reorganization plan, a negotiating plan, everything. And the goal of all this planning was to try and minimize the risk that the company faced, no matter what alternatives would come up. And so the company paid hundreds of very smart senior executives to try to avoid risk as much as possible. So the result, of course, was that nothing ever got done. And so after 3 years in the job, I decided to leave. I also made a commitment that I would actually do something very different in whatever my next professional challenge would be. And so there I was sitting in that particular position in September of 2016, because I had decided to look for a job that was quite different. I was approached by a venture capital firm based in Budapest, Hungary, that had an investment in a B2B tech startup. And the owner of this particular firm saw that there was a lot of potential in this company, but somehow the founders had lost their way, and he thought that some professional management would do them good. So I took the job, and I ended up actually having a very interesting experience, something that made me realize just how important planning really is. So I remember going into this conference room on my first day on the job as the CEO of this B2B tech startup and asking for some basic information, right? Sales plan, pipeline, business plan, cash flow statement, things like that. And all of these papers were spread out across the table in this conference room. And it didn't take me long to realize that this company had some real problems. They weren't really clear on what product they were selling. The target market was undefined. And basically, they didn't really have an understanding of what the sales and marketing process was. And so as a result, the whole team was very demotivated. Well, it also made me realize that because there had been so much lack of focus during this period, the company had actually run out of money and they didn't have much time left. And so it didn't take me long to realize that this job was not going to take forever. And so I actually informed the VC firm that it's not something that I would plan on doing for long term. Now, what I experienced, as I realized later, wasn't particularly unique. You see, I started working as a business growth mentor to startups around the world, generally in the business-to-business tech space. And I discovered a pattern. A startup founder with a really strong vision, a good entrepreneurial team, some traction, but they were somehow stuck, right? Their business lacked focus, their sales and marketing lacked effectiveness, the organizations lacked productivity. And what I realized is these startup founders had a lot of great ideas, but they didn't have a clear framework for deciding which ones to focus on and then executing them effectively. Now, as much as I hated that heavy corporate planning environment that I escaped at NBC Universal, I realized that it had a critical purpose. You see, planning creates a clear picture of what you want to achieve, what success looks like, and then forces you down a path towards reaching that ideal scenario. And I hear you hardcore entrepreneurs out there, even through this virtual world, saying to yourself, oh, planning is a waste of time. It slows you down. It makes you inefficient. Look, what I want to do today is prove to you that smart planning, when combined with agile execution, actually doesn't keep you back. It accelerates your growth. It makes you more likely to succeed. So what I want to share with you today is why I believe is essential for startups to adopt a new approach to building a business. I'm going to talk about something called the launch mindset. It's going to give you more insight in exactly how to adapt sort of this corporate planning and management techniques to an entrepreneurial setting and create the mindset for growth. Then I want to talk about the two pillars of the launch mindset in a little bit more detail: focus and agility, which I believe come together give you the best chance of success. And then I want to introduce you to a practical exercise I've developed called destination planning that will help you start implementing the launch mindset in your own businesses and set you on the path to growth. I really do hope that you'll get some value from these insights, so valuable, in fact, that you'll take some immediate action and apply some of these learnings to your own business. So how did the launch mindset come to life? Well, soon after my short-lived CEO gig, I remember feeling quite frustrated. I was an accomplished business executive with 30 years of experience launching and building companies around the world, and I hadn't been able to help this company achieve what I think every startup founder sets out to do when they start a business, which is basically to grow quickly and scale globally. And so I took a piece of paper out, and I wanted to understand this problem a little better. So I kind of drew a chart that I think captured the essence of these two different mindsets. I decided that the two factors that best distinguish corporate versus entrepreneurial thinking were their approaches to planning and execution. And I considered what I had seen in my 10 years as an entrepreneur and as an investor and advisor, and what I just experienced in this particular example I gave you. And I concluded that startups are really good at moving things forward, failing fast, getting things done, but they generally are pretty superficial when it comes to planning. I then thought back to my 20 years in various senior corporate roles, especially my last job, and I realized that the corporate mindset was quite different, right? They were very detailed in planning, but quite slow when it came to execution. And I remember looking at this chart and having this kind of aha moment. And I thought to myself, what if you could take the best of these both worlds and combine them into a new way of running a business? I imagined a business environment where leadership would take some time to evaluate their business, consider their options, some level of structure and consistency, but not at the expense of empowering employees to take decisions and take responsibility. And an environment where productivity, where getting things done was not a nice to have, it was as natural as breathing. And this kind of smart balance of planning and execution, I believe, would create the perfect environment to scale a business, one that would blast off, right? So the same way like a rocket, imagine poised at the launch pad, ready to gather up all the energy it needs to power it to lift off. And so I call this approach the launch mindset. Now, I put my theory to the test as I began to work with more and more startup founders as a mentor. And what I learned in my hundreds of hours of mentoring startup founders is that by combining the power of focus with the impact of agility, by applying the launch mindset, they could in fact generate the necessary uplift needed to accelerate their business's growth. Now, why is that? Well, I was reminded recently about the power of focus and of how by identifying a desired outcome, something that captures exactly what you want to see happen at a specific point in time, brings ideas to life. Now, I decided to buy a new car. I'm sure many of you have had the same experience. And I had done some research and made a decision to buy a particular brand and color of automobile, a red Volkswagen Arteon. And later that week, as I was driving, I noticed something really interesting. Everywhere I looked, I saw red Volkswagens heading in my direction. I mean, some were driving on the opposite side of the road. Some were parked at the side of the road. Occasionally, one would pull up next to me at the stoplight, at the traffic light. And I thought to myself, this is so bizarre. I mean, I've never seen so many red Volkswagens in my life. Now, it wasn't as if all of a sudden the entire world had decided to buy the exact same type of car that I had. It simply had decided on a desired outcome to purchase a certain type and color of car, and I began noticing things that supported that focus. And so what I learned from this experience is that if you pick a focus, it literally drives opportunity your way. So you start noticing things that were always there to begin with, but you were just not in the right frame of mind to discover them. Now, having a clear focus across multiple elements of your business is kind of the first pillar of the launch mindset and of rapidly scaling your startup. Now, one guy who really understood the power of focus more than anyone is somebody we all know, the legendary co-founder of Apple, Steve Jobs. Now, he insisted that everything be boiled down to its essence. Simplicity and focus were his mantras. I recently came across a video of a speech that Steve Jobs gave to a group of business people, local business people in Southern California back in 1980. Okay, so this was 41 years ago. Jobs was 25 years old. Apple was only 4 years old, and they had a single product. It was the Apple II desktop computer. Now, in this video, Jobs explains that the biggest problem that computer companies face is trying to remove this barrier that existed between people and their ability to use a computer. And at the time, you basically needed to be a programmer in order to use a computer. And so Jobs said that he believed that Apple was really well positioned to solve this problem because its entire philosophical foundation, its focus, was to create a direct relationship between one person and one computer and enable people to solve a range of problems through this relationship. Now, just as a reminder, this is Steve Jobs speaking in 1980. Okay, so this is before the World Wide Web existed, the commercial internet existed. This is before there was such a thing as a laptop, a smartphone, or apps. None of this existed. And you know, the irony here was that I was sitting in my bed in a September 2020, I believe it was, about to go to sleep for the night, watching Steve Jobs on YouTube on an iPad that I was holding in my hand. This guy clearly had a really strong focus for his business. Now, focus on its own comes to life through the introduction of the right level of planning. Now, I know planning is often considered a dirty word among startup founders, and believe me, I know what bad planning is, but I'm not talking about the extreme planning that goes on in multinational corporations. I'm talking about the type of planning where you make a reasonable analysis of the situation, consider different options, and then make a decision to move forward based on those assumptions. This level of planning is essential to building a successful startup. The benefits are clear. Having a clear, simple plan creates a path to your desired outcome. So it helps you develop market-ready products and services. It helps you identify the most appropriate sales and marketing channels, hire the right mix of team members, ensure the necessary funding. A plan helps you make better decisions. You know, I think one of the hardest things to do when you're building a business, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this yourselves, is saying no to opportunities that come in your direction, okay? Because those opportunities are always interesting, right? But they take you away from your focus. And saying no to those is a lot easier if you've got a clear plan of what you want to achieve. A plan also enables you to track your progress, okay? So if you've decided what you want to achieve and you've written it down, then you have something to compare it to, and you can see where you are and where you expect it to be and make the necessary adjustments quickly. And finally, I think a plan keeps you motivated. So we all know the ups and downs, the roller coaster ride of launching a business. When you've got a clear plan, it helps you overcome some of those short-term setbacks and continue towards your desired outcome. Now, what makes a simple plan work? 4 things. It's specific enough to determine your general direction, but flexible enough to allow for adjustments along the way. It lays out a clear end point, okay, and breaks down the key elements into steps that enables you to reach this end point. A simple plan is measurable. Okay, you can look at it objectively and determine whether or not it has been achieved. And a simple plan is written down and not just thought through. Writing a plan down forces you to think through the details and ensures that you have something to refer to later. And very importantly, it actually strengthens your commitment to delivering against the plan. If you get all this right, it can be incredibly empowering. I mean, I wish every startup founder could experience that. When I'm talking to one of my clients, we go through this process and you can see the physical impact of focus on them. Their shoulders relax, they brighten up, they start throwing out ideas about how they're going to exercise steps to realize their vision. It really is magical. Now, that's only one half of the pillar. The other half of the equation is agility. Now, agility is the ability to change and control the direction of your body while maintaining a constant rapid motion. So in athletics, right, if you look at a football player or a basketball player, that agility is something you'll see in their movements. Mental agility is the ability to think through problems quickly on your feet, making decisions and being creative, often under intense pressure. Now, I've discovered that there are really three behaviors that bring agility to life when you're building a business. And I've captured these into what I call the circle of agility, right? Focusing on solutions, making quick decisions, and maintaining your options. Together, these behaviors create what I call execution momentum, right? They drive progress forward and every aspect of your business, particularly as it relates to sales and marketing, managing your team, your performance, and getting things done. I'm going to talk about each of these very briefly. The circle of agility begins with a focus on solutions rather than problems, okay? If you create a mindset where you're constantly overcoming obstacles, then you just start finding solutions. Is your product development slow? Well, then you need to find more programmers. Is your go-to-market strategy stalling? Then you need to revisit your wealth value proposition. Are you running out of money? Well, then you need to save money in the short term and look for funding in the midterm. Once you get into the habit of solving problems, it actually builds momentum, right? You start to feel the rhythm of your business. You gain confidence and the energy to move things forward. And when you have momentum, it creates persistence. You get hooked on the idea of getting things done. You persist, you push through the limits, you drive by desire to succeed at all costs. And that persistence then strengthens your agility and the circle continues. If you maintain this rhythm, on occasion, you will feel that sense of flow. Perhaps you've experienced it. It's magical. It's the feeling that you're firing on all cylinders, that you can't do anything wrong. If you could bottle it and sell it, you could be a millionaire. The second element of the circle of agility is what I call decide and move on. So as you execute your plans, you will inevitably come to the fork in the road, right? You can go left or you can go right. Now, you may need to commit to one business partner or another, or hire a particular job candidate or one other. Sometimes there won't be an obvious choice. It's critical that you don't get stuck and fail to make a decision. Instead, talk through trusted advisors, choose your best option, and move on. You know what? Flip a coin if there's no other option. The fact is, not making decisions regularly will cripple your progress and eventually kill your business. And I've got a great example of this. I worked with a team of founders, 4 of them, involved in the drone and technology business, and they had an equal share in the business. And one member of the team, I'll call him Greg, had sort of informal power over the other, even though he only had 1/4 of the business. And Greg would spend weeks and weeks considering every tiny detail related to every key decision, no matter how small. He didn't support a course of action until he believed he had found the perfect solution. Well, we all know perfect doesn't exist, but Greg really supported a decision that wasn't perfect. And so as a result, all these critical issues were left unsolved, and the company really never gained momentum and eventually failed. So as Mark Zuckerberg says, done is better than perfect. Finally, the circle of agility is about keeping your options open. Okay, as you implement your plans, you will come across a solution that seems ideal. You may have found the perfect distribution partner or a perfect investor who shows interest in your company, and this is going to feel great, right? It's going to feel awesome. But you don't want to fall in love with your best option at the expense of all others. Okay, you may find that your ideal solution suddenly disappears, and if you don't have a plan B in place, then you're going to be left high and dry. The impact of this behavior is going to hold you back. I advised a European health tech startup that had met a potential bid distribution partner in the US about a year before we started working together. I'll call him Oliver. Oliver was a real sales guy, right? He had convinced the founders to enter an exclusive commercial agreement without paying anything in return. And after months and months of unfulfilled promises, I urged the company's CEO to look for alternative partners. But no, he insisted that this was the best option and they could stick with it. Unfortunately, after a year of unfulfilled promises, Oliver never came through. And instead of accelerating its growth, This reliance on a single option brought the health tech startups development to a screeching halt. The lesson is clear. Keep looking for alternatives to whatever problem you're trying to solve until you reach a clear point of no return. A point of no return means there's a signed contract, a transfer of funding, an obvious good faith execution of the agreement's core proposition. Once this happens, then you can commit to your perfect option, but never before. Now, I've talked to you about the launch mindset. I've talked to you about focus and agility and how those two combine to bring this launch mindset to life. I want to now turn to how you can actually implement this into your own organization. And you may be asking yourself, is it really realistic to implement these two very different approaches to a single company, right? Well, here's my view. If you're willing to let go of some negative assumptions, you can find a nice balance between planning and execution that is both comfortable and effective. Now, in this spirit of trying something new, let me share a planning exercise that I use in my work with startups. They found it to be both useful and eye-opening, and it's an exercise called destination planning. Destination planning is built around formulating an answer to one single question. Where do I want to take my business? Okay, a destination, think of it as the North Star, right? Polaris. It's what served as the guiding light for sailors who navigate the oceans at night. Before there was GPS and all sorts of technology, sailors would keep an eye out on the North Star at any given moment where it was in comparison to where they were heading. And this would help them navigate their ships to arrive safely to wherever they wanted to go. So your destination is just like your North Star. It will make sure you are always heading in the right direction, even when the waters become very choppy. Now, how do you create a destination? I've created a very simple process that you can follow yourself. The first step is to imagine yourself at a simple moment in time in the future. It should be long enough to implement plans and to see the results, but close enough so it's still relevant. All right, so 10 years from now is not relevant. I would suggest 18 to 24 months is realistic. Write a series of statements in the present tense, so as if you were in that moment, that describe your business. It's sort of like creating a snapshot of your business at that moment of time. Like if somebody was going to take a picture of your business, what would it look like? The more detailed it is, the more powerful it will become. Make sure you detail your business across a couple of key focus areas. The first is product. Okay, what does your product look like at that moment in time? What features does it have? How many deals do you have in place or customers do you have? What does your sales pipeline look like at that moment? How many people do you have in your company? Are you sitting with a couple of partners in a small room, or are you part of a 100-person organization with offices in 3 countries? How much revenue have you generated? How much money do you have in your bank account? Have you raised money? If so, how much and from whom? And finally, list whatever other element is important to you in terms of creating that destination. Maybe you want to work in a company where people don't work on Fridays, or you've won a special award or recognition that's important to you. Describe, finally, what you're feeling at that moment in time. We're people of emotions. We believe much stronger in emotions than in facts and figures. That's what sticks with us. So write down what you feel at that moment. Are you proud? Are you excited? What is it that excites you about that destination you've reached? As you keep these points in mind, you ultimately will create something like this. Our latest product release includes features X, Y, and Z. We've generated revenues of 500,000 euros from 30 clients. We have a 30-person team based in 3 countries. Our partnerships with X, Y, and Z support our international expansion plans. And I'm really proud of how we've achieved all of this with no external investment. Once you create this, it's not going to be some sort of pie-in-the-sky vision. It's actually a practical tool you can use. It gives you a clear picture of what success looks like, helps you track your progress, keeps you motivated, and inspires you and your team to achieve great things. There's a couple of things, though, you should keep in mind. One is, remember to think big. All right. I like to say, if your destination doesn't scare you a bit, it's probably not big enough. The second is, place your destination somewhere where you see it every day. Don't let that piece of paper be at the bottom of some drawer and never be seen again. Distill your destination into a few words or symbols or pictures, whatever it is that reminds you of the facts and feelings you've written down. Write these onto a sticky note or a Post-it note and place it on your bathroom mirror so you see it in the morning when you're brushing your teeth, or you put it in your computer screen so you see it every day when you start your workday. The important thing is that you come across this destination so often that it becomes a part of your day-to-day reality. If you are part of a founding team or have a partner, do the destination planning exercise together so you create a destination that reflects everybody's points of view, okay? Interestingly, a lot of founding teams I work with discover through this process, they actually have different views of where the business should go. Metaphorically speaking, one is heading to Tokyo, the other one's going to New York, and then they're wondering why they're on two completely different destinations and why they're pulling in opposite directions. So make sure that once you've created the destination, you share it with the rest of your team, your investors, even your customers. Any stakeholders who have a vested interest in your success should know what your destination is. And finally, use your destination as the endpoint for all of your future planning. So that's where you want to go. Work back from there to create objectives and action plans for relative shorter periods that take you closer to your ultimate destination step by step. So here's my point of view. Building and running a business does not have to be a choice between mind-numbing corporate planning and chaotic entrepreneurial execution, all right? I genuinely believe there's a third better way. If you adopt the launch mindset, you're going to combine the best of these very different worlds to create the ideal mindset for building a successful business. Tap into the two pillars of the launch mindset, the focus and the agility, and give yourself the best chance of accelerating your business growth. And finally, do destination planning. Try it. It's very simple, but it's very effective. And start implementing this launch mindset in your own company and lay the foundation for clarity and comfort. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions if you have them.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree more for this great point that you're making, that it's not about either or. It actually comes hand by hand, and startups can learn a lot from corporates, and corporates can also gain insights and this kind of a entrepreneur and passionate execution thing from startups. So thank you so much for sharing this. What a great way to start this day here at Podim. So I'm curious to hear, and by the way, if we have somebody who has a question, please place it there. We'll have one question, maybe time. I'm curious to hear, Zoltan, what do you do to plan on a day-to-day basis, let's say? How do you make sure that you stay on the top of your game, like day-to-day, like breaking this destination down into the trenches?
It's a great question. The way I look at it is there's three levels of planning. There's the long-term, mid-term, and short-term. Long-term is the destination, right? That's where you want to go in that 18 to 24 month time period. You can break those down then into objectives that support each of those points of your destination into 3, 6, 12-month periods. And then you break those down into individual actions. That is what creates kind of the linear connection between what you do day to day and what you want to achieve long-term. And I think that connection is what is really powerful. How you do that, of course, is that you set objectives that are measurable, and then you really do create actions. I think your destination is pretty firm for that period of time that you've created. Objectives obviously will evolve as you get more and more feedback from the market of what's working, what's not, and your actions change day to day, right, depending on what you need to do. But the important thing is, generally speaking, pick 3 things that you want to focus on in one particular day, and then just get those done, and then take you one step closer to reaching your ultimate destination.
Thank you so much, Zoltan, for this presentation, and I hope you stay with us here at Podim. It's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And now, our next speaker is somebody actually I know for a very long time. He's driven, he's really passionate, and he's always doing a lot of things, always engaged in a lot of projects. So let's see who is going to be presenting next. All right, guys, that's right. That's me. I'm going to be presenting right now, and I'm going to actually build on top of what Zoltan was speaking about, so hopefully my speech can complement his. Today, I want to talk to you about the unsexy truth about startup success. When we think about entrepreneurship, often we see ourselves in this picture, right? Like, I'm going to be my own boss, and I'm going to make an impact to the world, and I'm going to connect the dots and make the world a better place. But what entrepreneurship really is, when you start a company, you're basically running into the jungle. You're Mr. Nobody, and you get into this hostile place where, yes, it's very abundant. You can achieve a lot of things, but basically everything is trying to kill you. Everything is trying to, your competitors, the environment. There's so many things that can get you out of business. And I think we do not talk about enough how difficult it actually is to be an entrepreneur. In fact, there's only 1 out of 10 companies, actually less than 1 out of 10 companies that's going to be still on the market in a few years from now. That's not a big odd. It's actually a really small percentage. Now, I spent my last 10 years of my life in Denmark, a beautiful country in the Nordics, and a little bit about my story, where I come from. I'm a former video and movie producer who's been an entrepreneur running a digital agency in Denmark, who spent the last 5-6 years fully focused on helping companies, working with teams, helping them to be more productive, to build cultures and teams that actually help them to build companies, sustainable companies, long term. And let me introduce you to one dude, a handsome guy from Spain. His name is Cristobal Alonso, and he's the, as you can see, the El Patron, or the CEO of Startup Wise Guys, the largest B2B accelerator, startup accelerator in Europe, on a mission to become top 3 global accelerators. Cristobal and I have been working closely now for a number of years. I've been joining a lot of the projects of Wise Guys, and one thing we share in common is our passion for culture and our passion for team. How do we create startups that are not only focused on numbers, on the business case, but actually they focus on their people. They build the fundamentals, right? And in order to make it simple for startups, we've been working with him to create something that startups can use. So the Perform methodology, this is what you're going to see here, the framework. The Perform methodology is actually our attempt to make it simple for startups to pay attention to the things that matter a lot, but sometimes they get neglected, right? If you are a founder, maybe you focus on sales, on product, on looking for investors, and sometimes those kind of areas, they get neglected. So purpose and values. Why do you do what you do? What is the kind of impact you want to make as a team? What are the values and principles that you share? How do we operate as a company? Effective planning. We had a great keynote prior to this one talking about the importance of planning. Being very clear what you're after and then building it backwards into the day-to-day. Roles and responsibilities, surprisingly the area that's most neglected maybe. Everybody knows what's the role of the company. You know, Maria is the CEO, Ivan is the CTO, great. But what does it really mean? Group responsibility is no responsibility. Do we have a clear idea who's doing what? Who's the person that's accountable at the end of the day? Focus and execution. Getting things done. Being really focused on the things that matter most. Getting rid of all the obstacles on the way of proper execution. Optimal energy. It's hard to be an entrepreneur. Do we take care of our well-being, mentally, physically, emotionally, not just our own, but also giving a good example for the team to also take care of this? Robust communication. How well do we communicate with each other? How efficiently do we communicate? And finally, mental toughness. The capability to deal with stressors, to deal with unexpected circumstances, to stay on course, to stay positive and be focused on solutions. So this is a very simple framework that's being applied now by over 250 startups. We receive almost every day a message from somebody thanking us for giving us this simple tool, because it's not about what we know. A lot of things that you're going to hear today are things that you know, but hopefully I can inspire you to pay attention and take them in consideration. And we put all these learnings in the last 3 years working on this kind of a massive project, interviewing over 50 founders from this region that we call New Europe. I would like to share with you some of the findings, some of the tools that some of the best founders from this region, New Europe, which is Central Eastern Europe, how are they doing these things? For the sake of time, I'm only going to be covering the first 2-3 areas. So let's go there. I'll try to be as practical as I can be and bring you up from the mindset level to down into the trenches. So let's go. Number 1, purpose and values. And this is actually not an area that many startups talk about. But let me tell you something. This is Andrej Kusit, the CEO of Miro, who was kind enough to give us an interview for the book. This is what he said. Day 1 is the right time to start deciding on values and crafting the culture you want your startup to have. Day 1. It's not when you decide we need to scale and hire. It is at the very beginning you need to start having these conversations. What do we stand for? Why do we do what we do? And how do we do things really? Because that's all creating your operation system. All these systems are working well. Some people like Mac, some people like Windows. They're different. The culture is going to be created no matter what. The question is, do you design this culture? Is it intentionally created? Do you pay attention and put actually time and effort to build the culture that you want, or it just happened by itself? Something to think about. So, a simplified way to look at this is the 3 pillars of strong startup culture. And these are purpose, which is the why, values, which is the how, and vision, that's the what. Are you clear in your company on all those 3 things? And again, there's a lot of other things we have to talk to, but this is just, if you start with these 3 and really clarify what these things are and having alignment with your team, it's a lot easier afterwards to navigate, to manage the startup, but also to attract the people that connect to the same kind of things. So let me give you some examples so you can get a better picture of this. So this is Curify. It's originally from Ukraine, a company. This is their vision. A world with 0 diseases. Right? The vision is something that you are after. You might never be able to achieve it, but that's what we're striving for. That is the vision. It's inspiring. It is what we want to achieve. It is where we want to be as a company, as a team. What is your vision? Is everybody clear what the vision of the company is? And then let me introduce you to another gentleman. This is actually my accountant. A few years ago, I was looking for an accountant, and somebody said, well, you should speak to Klaus. He's a really good accountant. Okay. And I went to his webpage, and the first thing I see on his webpage is, I help small business owners to sleep better at night. That's his purpose. That's his why. That's how he wakes up in the morning. He's excited to help small business owners to sleep better at night. Accounting is his tool to do this. And let me tell you guys, this is not just some wording. I had times where this guy will help me out to do my personal taxes, will help me out to change my address in Denmark. He's not doing the accounting, it's not part of his job, that's his purpose. This is the why. And we put him in the book, we talk about it. You need to know what's your purpose. You need to know what's your why, and you need to know that, because when you know what's the purpose, it's easier to get people on board. Be it A-players employees for lower pay than the corporate can pay, or attracting investors, attracting clients. So really think about what's the purpose. Why do we do what we do? And then let's go to the values. I'm going to give you a couple of examples of values from the region. Fire App is a fintech company, actually 2 years in a row, the best fintech startup in Bulgaria. And these are their 3 values. Among the best, good enough is not an option. Honest and caring to our customers and every team member, proud and humble, a team of quiet achievers. Now, it took them quite some time to really polish them, but now that when they take decisions, they know what they stand for. It's very easy to go and say, hey guys, it's great, but it's not part of our culture. This is not what we stand for. Another good learning from looking at these values is only 3. Sometimes we write down these 10 values that we stand for, and if you ask anybody from the team, nobody knows what the values are. So keep it simple, keep them between 3 and 5, maybe, and try to personalize them. Like, look at this. Proud and humble, a team of quiet achievers. It's something very special for your team, right? Let me give you another example. These guys, Bobu, are a Turkish startup. And what I love about them is they've written down their values, and there's a description. What does that mean that we're living this value? What does that mean that we stand for this? And it's a very helpful exercise as well to discuss this. If your value is wellness of children, which is in their case, what does that mean? How do we behave in order to know that we actually live these values? The second point about this is, you can see there's visuals. We interviewed, as I said, over 50 founders. Some of them recommended make things memorable. If there is a value, maybe you want to put a picture. Maybe you want to make an illustration. So it's very easy for everybody to remember what we stand for, because values are not just something like a hiring tool. It's a decision-making tool. It's really practical, really. So again, to sum up the part about the values, one thing, start with observing what already is. Sometimes we like to write these aspirational values, right? Like transparency, punctuality, honesty. Great. Is that what we stand for? Is that what we've been doing? Let's have a look at what we've done in the last couple of months. Is that what we prioritize? Right? So let's observe. Very practical exercise. Ask your team to observe what's already happening. No more than 3 to 5 max. Keep it simple. You can test with it for a certain period. It's not like you do a workshop and all of a sudden, boom, we nailed it. Maybe you want to see if this actually the values you stand for, but keep it simple, 3 to 5. And again, make them personal. Make them very memorable, so anybody from the team, your co-founders, your partners, your team, they understand what the values are. All right. And a really, really good exercise if you want to try this out, if you want to start having a conversation in a more chill way, is you just gather your team and you ask them, if our startup was an animal, what animal would it be, right? So here's a couple of examples. A Turkish company, Cyber Struggle, they actually drew the animal after one of our workshops. And this is Honey Badger. And they said, Honey Badger doesn't give a fuck. They just do this thing and that and that. Whatever it is for you, right? But when you present to each other the animals that you can relate to, you find the startup is, it opens a very good discussion. And you can actually see what people see as the values. So that's a very good warm-up before you get people to say, okay, what are the most important values? Because if I say, it's an ego, because we are very sharp and we're very focused, okay, maybe focus and sharpness is something that's really important for me. So you can see some subtleties through this exercise. All right, moving forward. Let's go to the second part. My favorite area, effective planning, something that our previous speaker has been speaking about in a great way. This is David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done, the legendary methodology. I recently have him on one of my podcasts, and he loves to say this thing: you can do anything, but you can't do everything. You can do anything you want, but you can't do everything at the same time. And this is one of the biggest problems every startup founder has. There's so much good stuff to do. And we need to be more structured. We need to see the whole pictures and try to optimize our resources in terms of budget, people, team, so we can get the results that we want. And it's actually not a rocket science. Consistency beats any method. Zoltan suggested a couple of good resources. I'm also going to show you 2 methods that could be helpful for you. But it's really about creating this space do you have space to see the whole picture, right? Rushing down in the jungle, getting things done, execution, as Zoltan mentioned. Do you take the time to go higher up and just to reflect and say, where are we going? Should we change the direction? Should we change the plan a little? Is there a shorter way? And I'm going to say this is something you got to do on a day-to-day basis. This is something you need to teach your team to do on a day-to-day basis. How do we look at planning? Planning is bringing the future into the present so that you can do something about it now. This is Alan Lacan, he's an author. And I want you to think about planning in that way, no matter method you use. Planning is bringing the future into the present, right? Where do we want to be in 1 year, in 3 months, in a month, in a week? And let's build it backwards, right? Corporates are good at that. They do some cascading. There's these different methodologies. We love OKRs, for example, objectives and key results. You can go check them out after the speech. But the point is, how are we clear what we are after, and how do we build it backwards? We focus on our attention on the things that will lead us in this direction. And assuming you guys have very clear, specific goals, once again, OKRs is a great tool. Go check it out. I want to show you a couple of examples of how you can stay focused on the core priorities. This is an example from a Hungarian company, Talentuno. They were kind enough to share for our book how they do prioritization. And have a look at this. Every month, the management team, they meet up and they need to pitch to each other what their priorities for the month are. They cannot pick more than 5, right? And they need to have the other members of the team, the management team, to agree that these are the right things. So maybe Balázs says, hey, I want to do this. Okay, good, but this is not so important. Maybe you want to switch it. All right, good. One really important point here is, first of all, you share with the rest of the people, so you get accountable, right? Secondly, the guy with the green, Zoltan, he's actually the CEO. He's arguably the most busy person here. However, he's the one with the least priorities. You only have 3. Why? Because the less the priorities, the fewer the priorities, the better the focus. And he knows that. So think about this when you're setting your priorities. Where do you spend your time? Where is your time going? Now, these guys are going one step ahead, and they actually say, for the first priority, I need to spend up to 30% of my time. The second priority, 25, third priority, 15, fourth, 10, the fifth, 10%. This is just some kind of a guideline, but they want to stay focused. They know what the priorities are. Let's put our energy in producing results in these. Okay, just one example for you guys to maybe get inspired to be more clear what you should be going after. And the second tool I want to show you when it comes to planning is the perform planning method. How do you bring this into the day-to-day? This is really good for you, for your personal time management and self-management, but it is also really good to teach your team to take ownership and be clear what they are after. Just like Zoltan said, to be clear what's the outcome. Don't start your day until you have it finished. It's a quote from Jim Rohn. Don't start your day until you have it finished. What am I after? So let me show you a 5-step process, the perform planning methods, that will help you to get on top of your time, to bring your long-term goals into the day-to-day. Step number 1, and by the way, we're going to be looking at the example from Knowledge Gate Group, the CEO of Knowledge Gate Group, Victoria Vasilenko. So stay with me on that one. The first step when you're planning your day is, you reflect on the previous one, you look at the goals, you look at the meetings, and you just dump everything that potentially might be important for you to get done. So you just capture it, right? You can look at GTD system, you can look at Tim Ferriss, like all kind of productivity systems. They say, get things out of your head, put it on a piece of paper, put it on your spreadsheet, whatever works for you, but one place, you dump everything there. And for a lot of people, this is the usual to-do list, right? create new job posting, revamp LinkedIn page, blah, blah, blah. The problem is you don't know why you do these things. Why do I want to revamp the LinkedIn page? What's the actual outcome, right? And usually it could be like 30, 40 different things. So it's really hard to focus. The second step is to group them a little bit together. Okay, this is the marketing, this is sales, these things are related to that. All right. We only have 5 or 6 things that we should actually work on. 5 or 6 results we want to produce, right? But still, it's not very clear. So the third step is to define the actual outcomes. What's your outcome? Calling customer. Why do you want to call the customer? Do you want to land the deal for 5,000 euro? Okay, that's a concrete outcome. Or, I love this. Tomorrow I'm going to do sales. What does that mean? Is it calling 40 potential customers to attract them for a demo meeting? Okay, that's very tangible and clear. Then you can build it backwards. So here it's all about getting clear what you're after, right? The fourth step is my favorite. It's creating something which we call your daily menu. When you go to a restaurant, they either give you a menu or you can just say, hey, I want a Coke. Well, I want the menu. I want to know what are my options so I can invest my time and my team's time in the things that matter most. The problem is I cannot do it in my head. So I need a spreadsheet or a piece of paper so I can see all the possibilities. These are the concrete outcomes we need to produce tomorrow. This is the highest priorities. And you can do a lot of things. You can say, what's the Pareto rule? 20% of things that will get us 80% of results. There's the urgent and important. There's a lot of tools, but you usually know what's the high priority. How much time are things taking me? Like, do some accounting, do some budgeting. Not of your money, of your time. If I spend 1 hour here, I'm not going to be able to spend 1 hour here. Opportunity cost, right? Can I delegate to somebody else from my team? So when you do this little analysis here, the most important step is schedule it in your calendar. Block time in your calendar for the things that matter most. And some people say, this is probably, oh my God, this is so, you're a control freak. No. I can move these things around all the time, but when I know what's the most important things, I block them in my calendar, even if it's about having a meeting with myself, it still works. Then I can be flexible. A couple of pointers about planning, and then we finish with the last area. Steli FT, the CEO of Close, 8-figure CRM system. That's what he said. My biggest productivity tool is saying no. Learn to say no to things. And when you're planning, when you're clear what you're after, it's easier to say no. Second example, Jay Papasan, the co-author of The One Thing. He was recently a guest of my podcast, Productivity Mastery. This is a brilliant question at the core of their book. What's the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else gets easier or unnecessary? Great question to ask yourself during your daily planning session. Which leads me to the next area, which is roles and responsibilities. As I mentioned previously, everybody knows the roles usually, the titles, but we don't talk enough about responsibilities, right? The role is the big thing, the title, but what are the concrete responsibilities we stand for? So let me give you another dimension. Usually we put people to do stuff based on their strengths. Maria is really good in tech. She's doing the tech. Ivan is really good in finance. He's going to do finance. Great. But do we talk about passions? Do you know as a founder, as a leader, what your team loves to do? I'm really good in finance. I have a bachelor master's degree in finance. I don't really enjoy it. I'm okay doing it. Do we have this clear picture around it? Let me give you the most practical exercise. This is the highest rated exercise you can find from the methodology, the map of responsibilities. Very simple, but it can lead to great outcomes. So what does it mean? You come up with your team and you tell everybody, let's have a list, let's put a list of all the responsibilities. And let's sit down and everybody honestly, brutally honest, need to write down what are the things that you love to do and you're good at, colored in green. The things that, it's okay. I don't really enjoy it so much. I'm good at it. I can do it. It doesn't bother me, but I'm not really excited about it. And what are the things that I hate to do? Or maybe I'm terribly bad at it. So you put this and you have a real conversation. Oh man, most of your list is red. We need to do something about it. You want to burn out. Or maybe the period is like that you cannot hire somebody new. Somebody has to do the marketing, right? Nobody wants to do the marketing, but it's important. Okay, good. Hey man, stick with it for 2 more months. We'll find somebody. But you have these discussions, right? We don't talk about these things. We talk about responsibilities. Group responsibility is a no responsibility. Another tool that's very complementary to this one is RACI. I'm not going to go in detail. The beautiful thing about it is that there could be only one person accountable for a specific thing. Go check it out online and go in depth. RACI is a great tool to complement the map of responsibilities. And we come back to where we started. Here in the jungle. How are you going to approach it? What are you going to focus on? How do you make sure that you focus on your team and build a culture where people are performing, they're productive, but they're also well taken care of? They're understood, they're heard, they're listened to. They feel they're part of something bigger than themselves. Something to think about. So one simple tool, the final tool that I want to share is, you can take a screenshot, you can find it in our webpage, Perform. Sit down with your team and ask them to measure, how are we performing if the rating is from 1 to 10 in each of these 7 areas? Give us an honest answer. Planning. I might say we're at 9, right? We're crushing it. But somebody from my team might think it's a 4. Why is it a 4? Let's talk about it. What can we do to improve? Who is going to take ownership to actually improve this area? Okay, so that's the final thing. Just want to wrap it up with it. If you want to learn more, there are some tools. You can find links to the podcast, to our academy, to the book at performnow.eu. But in any case, if you want a signed copy from the book, there's still a few copies you can order. Just go to my LinkedIn. This is my name, Stoyan Yankov. Just ping me on LinkedIn, DM me there, or me on Instagram. Or if you have any questions or comments, I'll be happy to hear from you guys. Really, really excited to hear what you thought about this Perform methodology. And if you want to get some inspiration, further inspiration, I'm interviewing some of the most exciting, the biggest performance worldwide when it comes to productivity, performance, business. Soon I'll have, actually on the 10th of July, the founder of Reebok is going to be my guest. So a lot of great people there. You might want to go and subscribe for the podcast. And that being said, thank you so much for your attention, and you guys keep performing. So, thank you so much, guys, for your attention. Once again, I'll be super happy if you connect with me on LinkedIn, if you send me any feedback, any comments, if you just connect, and if you have any idea for a project or anything. How does that sound to you? Is it helpful? So, thanks for your attention, and let's actually go for the next session, because we have a very interesting guest joining us, the third guest from this section, the Growth Academy, and let us see who that is. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm super, super excited to welcome here on stage Chris Alt. Chris is an internationally recognized growth expert, founder, lecturer, and keynote speaker. He co-founded, built, and exited Rockboost, a several times awarded as top 10 global growth hacking agency. He has consulted hundreds of entrepreneurs on strategy, growth levers, and how to generate more revenue, something that we are all excited about. Chris Alt, welcome here in the studio of Podim.
Thank you very much.
How are you doing today, Chris?
Well, I'm kind of nervous, to be honest, because I am normally living in the Netherlands and I'm doing all my keynotes from there, and it works very well with the internet connection. But now I'm in Spain for 10 days. And in the past couple of days, I've been stressing out about the internet connection over here. So hopefully it works, because I've tried everything to make sure I can give a very strong presentation today. But I'm kind of nervous about that, but it will work out.
Chris, let's let it go, my friend. Look, the connection is great. It's going to be awesome. I can't wait to hear your presentation, but just like free your mind about the tech stuff. I know how it is when you we're not sure about the Wi-Fi, the tech and everything, but look, we have a great audience here, growth mindset people. They're patient and they understand that we're doing things digitally. So I would say just enjoy this next close to an hour. The floor is yours, and let's enjoy what you have to share with us. Afterwards, we'll come back, and I would like to invite the audience of Podim in the app. If you have any questions, you can post it in the app at any point. And once Chris is done with the conversation, with the presentation, we will come back here and have a little discussion. So, Chris, your internet connection is flawless at the moment. Let's use that opportunity. The floor is yours. You can share with us what you have to share.
Thank you very much. No, I'm super excited to be here, and that's for a couple of reasons. And one of the main reasons is that I have very good memories about Slovenia, because in 2018, I've been speaking at Podim for the first time. And I liked Slovenia so much that I actually decided almost 2 years ago to propose to my now wife on Lake Bled, which has been a fascinating experience for her. I've been for more than 1 week in Ljubljana with her while she was pregnant, and that was really nice. So Slovenia will always have a special place in my heart. So that's why I was also nervous for this presentation, because I wanted to make sure to give you the best that I can offer. I'm also really happy because I'm not stuck at this office anymore. Years ago, I was a first-year auditor at KPMG, and I hated my job so much that I decided to quit my job to become an entrepreneur. But this is how I was laying in my bed, because I didn't have an idea for a startup. I didn't have any money for a startup, and my girlfriend back at the time thought that I was completely crazy. But you know what? We thought, okay, let's go for this, just to make sure that we are going to make a success out of this, and we will make a lot of money. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. We lost more than 200K of our own money in our first year. So if you're running a startup right now and it's not taking off, like, I know the feeling. So be with me, you can get out of there. Because that year of running that startup, of not having a success, gave us an incredible gift. And it's a gift that we took a deep dive in immersion in the world of growth hacking, online marketing, all kinds of new stuff, which I knew nothing about. Because as I said, I was trained as an auditor. This is a picture of me with Sean Ellis. He is the guy that founded the term growth hacking, coined the term growth hacking years already ago in the United States, in Silicon Valley. And this is me with him in Hamburg, in Germany, where we are both discussing growth and what you can do. And he has been an advisor for myself and our company to make sure that we get the most out of it. And as was said during my introduction, I had a great time learning about everything about growth. We created a great growth hacking agency, worked for very big clients. And of course, that's what people like when you see these big logos. But what actually excited me the most are talking to people like you. Startups, scale-ups, people who are still figuring out, who want to grow, and where I know that if they grow, it has a massive impact on their personal life. Because what is really exciting to me is helping people monetize the growth opportunity that's in front of them. Because one of the biggest problems that I see is that we talk about all these great growth stuff, all the difficult stuff, but there is, and this is really important, so please pay very well attention right now, there is a growth opportunity in front of you. And if you take that growth opportunity and monetize that, your growth will become easier and faster. And that's what I want to guide you to in this presentation today. So also pay attention, make sure you write down every question that you have based on this presentation, because I love to answer questions. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and I always love to hear from people. So connect over there, and if you have any questions, please send it over. And as I said, write down all your questions, because I'm still writing my new book, Structuring for Extreme Revenue Growth, which will be released in October in the Netherlands. And with a very good publisher, we're going to put a lot of effort in it to make sure that it becomes the next international bestseller in the growth area. And again, you see the subtitle, Quickly Monetize Your Biggest Business Opportunity, your biggest opportunity. And that's again what I want to help you towards in this presentation, to make you very aware about the biggest growth opportunity that's in front of you. And I'm going to give you strategies, principles, tactics that you can use to monetize that opportunity. So put on those new goggles, put on that new mindset, and start to see the world and focus on that growth opportunity that's in front of you. Because there is a 2021 growth gap. There is a challenge. And I want to show you that challenge. Because what's that growth gap? What do I see with a lot of startups and scale-ups is how do I structure the strategy and the teams so I can actually handle extreme revenue growth? Because a lot of people want it, but let me tell you a secret, not a lot of people are ready for it. And that's what I'm going to show you today. How can you become ready to go into extreme revenue growth? And again, how do you make this as easy as possible? So what's that growth opportunity in front of you? But also, how can you make that opportunity and grow as easy as possible and monetize that to the best extent that's there? And how do you do that? And this is a very big secret that not a lot of people talk about, is how can you reinvent yourself as fast as possible? Because if you drill down growth in a startup and a scale-up to its essence, and also into corporate innovation, it's are we able to reinvent ourselves as quickly as possible to show a new version of ourselves and make sure that we can grow with that. And I'm coming from the world of growth hacking. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to guide you through that world to make sure that you're ready to find the answer for that 2021 growth gap, and also to make sure that you can tap into that growth opportunity that's in front of you. Because growth hacking is not new anymore. Growth hacking is already old. It's already more than 10 years old. So it has to develop. Like the leadership methodology, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, an international bestseller from Stephen Covey. He wrote the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And at the end, he also had to write a new one, the 8th habit. Because step 1 was getting to effectiveness, but eventually you want to go to greatness. I want to show you today how effective growth hacking can be, but what the step is that you can do to get it to greatness and to make sure that everybody starts to adopt it. So what is growth hacking? I had to answer this question a lot in the last years. So what I did, and actually what I spoke about in 2018 on this stage at Podim, were the 7 pillars of growth hacking. So this is the model that I developed when I had my previous growth hacking agency, Rockboost. And then it was all about the mindset. So what type of mindset do you need to have? How do you need to structure your team so you can get the most out of this? What do you need to measure? Because there are only a few things that are essential, but if you measure that, then you can go to the next level. Also, listening to your market. Are you able to get deep inside that head of people to make sure that you know what they are going to say before they even know that they are going to say it? So think about this. For your startup, for your scale-up, for your corporate innovation, when you look at your clients, are you already able to predict what they're going to say before they know that they're going to say it? Because if you know that, then you have a great foundation to create product market fits, to create products where people cannot live without. Because that's a great foundation for growth. If you have a product where people cannot live without and they want to share it with their friends and their family. Because then traction, you can get it to a next level. And that's also what I want to show you today. Because eventually that's what you want to optimize with A/B testing, with experimentation, and get that to a higher level. So what I'm going to do today is show you step by step the key nuggets from this model. And as I said again, in 2018, I would show the entire model. That was my full presentation. Now I want to show you the best pieces out of that and use that as the foundation for the next thing that I'm going to show you. Because at the end, if you want to make growth in a growth hacking system, you want to show the process, it's all about having that focused one metric that matters. So eventually you're going to start analyzing, okay, what should we do to get to that growth? Out of that analysis, you get into ideas. You're prioritizing those ideas, and then you're going to test it. And you want to do this loop as fast as possible and as many times as possible. In growth hacking terms, we call this high tempo testing. You want to test at the highest tempo possible. And one thing to remember is if you're able to test 3 times more than your competition, either in a startup or in a scale-up or in a corporate environment, you will grow faster. Because why is that? You'll learn more. You start to understand your growth system. You start to understand what works and what not. And what I'm going to show in my new book, for example, is where all these steps have flaws, where it can go wrong. Because some companies are really successful with this and others aren't. And I'll probably share also a couple of those examples today during this presentation. Because what's the philosophy? It's all about the more you test, the more you can learn about what works and what doesn't work. And eventually, the better you understand your growth system. Because every company has their unique growth formula. And that's the second thing that I want you to take and pay attention to. What is that growth formula for my business? Because as I said, with analyzing, you want to reverse engineering what's working and what's not. So you can generate growth ideas which can make an impact. So you can prioritize determining which growth experiments you're going to run. And one key thing, add the financials to this prioritization. Don't do random stuff, but make sure it's data-driven. And you want to get those tests live. And eventually you can do this as fast as possible when you have a systems mindset. And this is something that I've been talking about for years, but I think it's really important to have that systems mindset in place because everything is a system. Going to the gym, growing your company, losing weight, there is a sequential process that you can follow. And if you have documented this process, so getting things out of your head, getting things on paper, how do we acquire customers? How do we retain customers? What's working for us and what's not working for us? The more it's documented, the easier it is also to delegate. And that's also a very special trick. Once you've documented stuff, especially as a founder, you can delegate it. And founders who are great at delegating will see the disproportionate effect of that skills in their growth trajectory. Because if it's documented, you can improve that system. And also very important, if the system is not documented, if there's no system thinking, it's also really hard to find that hack. And if you don't know what the system is, get into action. Start to acquire new customers and see where it breaks, where it goes easy, and which flow of steps does it go. Because the better you understand that, the easier it is to find that hack. But how do you want to work? Is you want to work together with growth teams. So this is, especially when you talk about a startup and a scale-up context, this is a setup that's probably already there because you're still small. But if you're in a bigger environment, so let's say in a corporate and you do innovation, it's really important that you put these type of teams together. And as I said, what I'm going to do during this presentation, during this keynotes, is show you the behind the scenes stuff. So not only the theory, but also where it breaks and what the secrets are to make sure that you can do things smarter, that it can actually work, instead of just trying stuff and then not understanding why it doesn't work. The most important thing with a growth team is that you have one person accountable. I also saw it in the previous presentation, the Raki model. I'm a big fan of that because you need to have one person who's accountable. You want to add developers to growth teams. And what do I mean with developers? Those are the people that can put an experiment live. What I see in a lot of bigger organizations is that they talk about having growth teams, but once they come up with an experiment, they can't put it live. They can't get it live. So you need to have developers. You need to have these people that get those experiments live. You need to have marketing specialists, so people who understand the channels. You want to have analysts, people who can understand the data. And again, you want to have a complete team, so also designers. This is the basic setup for a growth team that's working on a digital layer of a business or of a startup or a scale-up. But once you look at this skill set, at this team setup, you'll see that the most constrained people are the developers and the analysts. So you want to make sure that you're really smart on which type of things you put their attention to and what they do. Because if you look at the essence of what is a growth hacker, it's the intersection of three skills: high level, creative marketing, automation, engineering, and experiments and data. And if you look at the setup of a team, it's that combination. But in the perfect world, you want to have as many people who can execute on this within themselves, to have that T-shaped skill set. If you want to know more about that T-shaped skill set, I'll soon share on my LinkedIn and on my website some next level stuff, some new concepts that I've created about that. But I also have an ebook which is on my website where you can download more about this and where you can find that stuff. And then again, we have a certain mindset which is important. We're starting to think in systems. But this is a perfect example of a system, of a sequential flow. Because what you want to know, you want to follow the pirate metric with the pirate funnel. So where are customers seeing us for the first time? What do we do to make sure they come to our website, to get them to a sign up? How do we make sure that they actually start to buy from us, that we're activating them, that they are coming back? And this is where a big growth gap is for a lot of startups. Is the first code they try to figure out, how can we get people to buy from us for the first time? But then they forget one major important thing. They don't focus on retention enough. Because what I will show you later during this presentation is if you can also crack that code, and I'm going to show you two models for that, your startup has way higher chances of getting into extreme revenue growth. Because after retention, you want to understand, are customers, happy customers referring us, and are we generating revenue? Because you can get a lot of users, but if you're not able to turn it into revenue, I believe you still have a faulty model. What was the biggest mistake that a lot of startups make, and a mistake that I made myself, is starting a startup, starting something without really knowing the pain. Starting a startup without any market need. And what I learned is that the best startups are rooted in pain, deep pain from a customer. Because if you know that pain from a customer and you build a solution to that problem, then you can have a lot of success. Because if you look at the essence of business, and this is a great book that I highly recommend for everybody that's now doing a startup, is the book Start From Zero from Dane Maxwell. So again, Start From Zero from Dane Maxwell. And he describes perfectly that a business in its essence is nothing else than a customer who uses a mechanisms to get a result. But if you don't know the pain out of which they want to have a result, you don't have a strong foundation for a startup. Because as I said, the more your startup is rooted in pain, the easier it is to get product market fit. Because what do you want to make sure of? And this is also a very important concept coming out of the world from growth hacking, is you want to make sure that more than 40% of your customers would be very disappointed if they can't use your service or product anymore. How do you know that? Is you're asking the question to your customers, how disappointed would you be if you can't use our service or product anymore? They could say very disappointed, slightly disappointed, not disappointed, or I will never use your service anymore. Why is this such a powerful question? And that's what you want to know. Why is this so important? Because the qualitative answer on the why they chose for a certain option will give you a lot of cues on where you need to double down, where you need to change stuff, or where do you need to do more of. Because what you want to have is you want to understand which segment of your customer is very disappointed and how can you get more of those customers in. Because I'm a very big believer of letting growth be easy. And growth is easy if you double down on the right customers. Because what do you want to understand? You want to understand two things. Two things. The first one, the aha moment. So when are customers really, really happy with you? But also you want to understand what are the moments of friction. So when are they pissed with you? When do they don't like you? Because if you understand those roads to those journey, then you can actually start to predict your success. Your economics will become better because you know, and this is also a very important thing, so write this down. A great startup is a money machine where if you put €1 in, you should get more than €1 back. And you can do that by finding the way to the aha moment and how you can reduce friction. Because at the end, a company like Facebook knows that if you have more than 7 friends within 10 days, you'll keep using Facebook. Twitter knows that if you follow more than 30 people, you'll keep using Twitter. And Slack knows that if a team has sent 2,000 messages to each other, that a customer, a company is addicted to Slack. So think very carefully. When should Slack ask for money? Is it at 1,500 messages or at 2,000 messages or 2,000 plus messages? And what I want you to do is if you look at the biggest opportunity that's in front of you, there are very big chances that it's in this region. Do you understand the road from getting a new customer in to that moment when they say, you know what, I would be very disappointed if I can't use your product or service anymore. Because if you ask for money at that time, then you know that you can get a disproportionate return on that. And eventually you need money, you need cash, you need capital to fund your traction. Because as you can see, there are 19 different traction channels, and this is coming from the book Traction. I think it's already a couple of years old, but it's a high-level concept which help you to choose, okay, where are we going to focus on? And if you look at the beauty of these channels, you need to figure out, and I saw a great post around that today, is founder go-to-market fit. And what do we mean with that? Is as a founder, you have a natural tendency to either do outbound sales or to do PR or to do marketing. So when you look at your go-to-market strategy, also try to figure out which channel is actually going easier for me. Which channel do I actually like? I love to speak. I love to help people. I love to train people. I love to inspire people. So speaking engagement have been a very big traction channel for me. But I also know that for other people, it wouldn't be the case. So it's smarter for them to pick another channel. Because what you want to do is you want to stack those channels on top of each other. And I want to show you the principles out of that. And what's the basic channel stack? What do you need to do in its essence when you're doing marketing and growth? First thing, you want to get their attention somewhere. That was also the step in the pirate metrics. But what you want to do is you want to get their contact details so you can direct message them. And this is important, especially in a new world, which is going to be cookieless. You want to have a clear line of communication, which you own, to that customer. And you want to increase the amount of platforms where you can do that. So how does it look like in practice? Very simple, very basic setup of a channel stack. So how are channels working together? Basically, you're stacking channels on top of each other. You start with the Facebook ad, where you can get people onto your website to get them on your email list. And eventually, once they are on your email list, you also connect them on LinkedIn. For B2B startups and scale-ups, this is a very important tactic. Everybody that's joining your email list, also connect them on LinkedIn. Because chances are higher that they unsubscribe from your email list compared to unsubscribe on LinkedIn. And now you have to pay really good attention because I'm going to show you some really advanced stuff. Again, I will show more detailed stuff about this in my book. But this is a concept where I think that if you use this in a startup, scale-up, or corporate innovation environment, you can get a really great return. Because I said step one is getting their attention. But if you want to go one layer deeper, what you need to do is you need to get their attention on a platform where your ideal customer is coming together. And this is important, where your competition is not advertising or promoting themselves. So this means that you need to go more niche. You need to go to smaller segments, but in that segment, you'll probably have a monopoly if you're the only one doing that. Because what you want to do is you want to get their contact details so you can send them messages on a platform where there's no banner blindness or spam fatigue. So look at your phone right now. And if you look at your WhatsApp messages, for example, how many of them are unread? And try to put your email next to that. I think for 99% of the people watching this, you have more unread emails than unread WhatsApp messages. So you want to make sure that you're on a platform where people get a little bit itchy if they haven't opened all their messages. And you want to increase the amount of platforms where you can do that. So you can, again, direct message them. A great, more niche platform is Quora, which is a forum, especially if you're in an international context, that works really well. I've run campaigns over there, which had up to 40 times better return on investment compared to doing these things on Google. And then we got people from Quora to Facebook Messenger or WhatsApp or Clubhouse. And we are increasing the amount of channels where we can direct message them. So again, it might sound conceptual, but if you do these steps, chances are way higher that you can reach your customer and that you own that relationship. And I think email is still a great way to do that. Because if people buy from you, they are converting, and only for two reasons. A conversion is nothing else than an increased desire and lower friction. So what you want to do with all what you do in your marketing and in your sales, you want to increase the desire, make sure that people want it more, and you want to reduce that friction. And a little bit more advanced model on this is the lift model from Chris Goward, where he looks, okay, what's the value proposition? So in the mind of the customer, what would I get if I click this button? First, what would it cost me? The more relevant and clear this is, the faster they will buy. The more distraction and anxiety you introduce, the slower they will buy. And eventually you need to give it a boost with urgency. And these are great concepts that can really help you to set up the digital layer of your business. So what I've just shown you are the nuggets, the basic foundations from the model, the 7 pillars of growth hacking, which I've been developing for years right now. But it was a model which I've built in my previous growth agency. And of course, I've exited that. And now I want to make sure that I show you guys the latest stuff that is really next level. Because although the 7 pillars of growth hacking are a very good model, from an implementation perspective, there are a couple of things where it goes wrong. And I think especially the first one and the last one are really important, because I see that a lot of people actually don't understand their growth system. And that's kind of a shame, because once you do that, you can really get a great return on it. And what I also see is that especially within bigger organizations, growth hacking stays on a tactical level within the marketing department. And that's such a shame, because this philosophy, this way of working, can really take companies into a next level growth stage. What I also see is that a lot of growth hackers are young and miss the connection between, and this is important, the company's strategy and high tempo experimentation, because you want to run as many experiments as possible, but you want to also connect that back to the strategy. And this is something where I see a lot of people struggle with, because most growth hacks, they stay within one channel. And a big pain, a big objection that I see, and also a big waste, is that a lot of growth hackers, or people that call themselves growth hackers, can't touch the product. They're not able to change that product experience, which is such a foundation. And what you also see is that the bigger an organization becomes, and the more risk averse, they become slower. And what you want to do with growth hacking is that there are a lot of short-term opportunities and you want to get out of that. You want to exploit those. You want to get the max out of what's possible. And the bigger and the more slow an organization becomes, the less chances that you can do that. So I've been searching for a solution, because within my agency, I was able to test with hundreds of companies in all kinds of industries, all kinds of sizes, what are fundamental things that work. So I tried to break it down to its essence. And how did I do that? I used a very important framework, the framework of first principle thinking. Because there are these sayings, if you teach somebody the principles, they can connect thousands of tactics with each other. And a big thing that I see happening with a lot of people teaching growth hacking or showing growth hacks is they only show the tactics. But I believe that if you understand the principles, you can become way stronger in growth. So what is first principle thinking? You want to deconstruct a problem to its essence by proactively questioning every assumption. And then once you have broken it down, reconstruct it out of that. And what I'm doing with my book right now is I'm searching for the first principles of growth. So what are the foundational principles that if everybody in the company understands those principles, growth will have a common vocabulary and will become way easier. And I've came up with 4 right now. And the most important one is reinvention speed. Because if you're either exploiting or exploring, you're doing A/B testing, or you're changing, it's all about the faster you're able to reinvent yourself, show a new version of yourself to the market, and see what works. That's a really essential thing. The better you are at this, the stronger your growth model. The second one, clarity. And I posted about this on LinkedIn yesterday, because what I learned is the more clear things are, the easier growth will be. And the more vagueness that there is, the slower you will grow. So if you have a growth problem, ask yourself, is everything clear? Is our focus clear? Our goal, the team setup, roles and responsibilities, target customer, what our product is delivering. The clearer it is, the better you can also message to customers, and the faster you will grow. Because what you want to do is you want to be able to recognize the patterns of growth. And a lot of people will talk about AI, machine learning, deep learning, all these new things, which will change the world. And why are they able to do that? Because they follow patterns. And I'm a very big believer that if you're able to recognize the pattern about what's working and understanding your growth formula as a pattern, the better you're able to do that, the easier it is also to train the machines and to leverage all the automation that's there. And the fourth one, functional laziness. And what do I mean with that? You want to get from A to B in the easiest way possible. And what I see within a lot of companies is they're making growth hard. Well, actually, you should be lazy about it. It should become easy. And this is why you need to ask yourself the question, how would it look like if it were easy? Or what's the one thing that we can do to make sure that everything else become easier? Functional laziness. And then again, I will write more about this in my book, but I think that if we deconstruct growth, then these are really 4 fundamental principles that we need to take into account. Because what you want to do is you want to get back into the essence of growth. You want to find your growth levers. I think a lot of people over here know the Pareto principle, where 20% of customers will generate 80% of your growth or 80% of your revenue. 20% of customers will have 80% of customer service complaints. But if you do that 80-20 rule a couple of times, you'll see that less than 1% of what you do will make more than 50% of the impact. So what I'm really focused on right now in the growth teams that I coach, the people that I help, is where can we find the growth lever? If there was only one thing we were allowed to do that would have a disproportionate impact, what would that be? Because if we look at the difference between a growth lever and a growth hack, we can see that a growth hack in a lot of cases is a weak spot in a channel that you're exploiting. It's more short-term focused. It's an exploitation of a window of opportunity. And in a lot of cases, there's a local maximum. So you reach a certain point, and after that, you won't get that return anymore. But with a growth lever, it's more strategic. Yeah, and think about it. Like, what would a CEO of a big company rather have? A growth lever or a growth hack? So one word can make a massive difference in this sense. It combines short and midterm and long-term capabilities, and it becomes more holistic. And this is important. As I said, a lot of growth hackers miss the connection between strategy and high-tempo experimentation. And by thinking from a growth lever perspective and testing your growth levers, you can make it more holistic. I've written together with my wife, who's also a marketing expert, already doing more than 10 years of lead generation and all these type of things. We've asked ourselves the question, can we find growth levers that could be applicable in every company? And what can we write about that? And we wrote a growth lever cheat sheet. So if you go to this URL, cheatsheet.chrisout.com, you can download it for free. And what you'll see is an explanation of the 3 biggest growth levers. So the first one is the Dream 100, the second one, the value ladder, and the third one, the revenue stress test. And I will give you a high-level overview during this presentation about these 3 growth levers, because those can help you to find that 1% that will generate 50% of the impact. Because what's a Dream 100? As I said, you need to go more niche. You want to find the websites where your ideal customers are, message boards, Facebook groups, who are the influencers that they follow, email newsletters, blogs that are reading, channels that they follow. So what you see, this is not about just putting a Facebook ad live. This is all about what are all the individual niches where my ideal customer is. So if you're not clear about who that customer is, then this will already not work. That's why it's so important to have a clear overview of that ideal customer, the person who makes you the most money, and who has the biggest product market fit, because that's where you want to double down on. That's where you want to use this exercise for. So how do you build this? You want to leverage those 100 places, and you want to build a relationship with the community owners. Let's say if it's a Facebook group or a LinkedIn group or something else, there is somebody, the owner of that group. And if they start to promote you instead of your competition, like you're a monopoly, like you can get there and you can get a disproportionate return. And you want to get them to promote you. And if they are promoting you, you can also advertise over there. And again, as I said, you want to build money machines where if you put €1 in, you get more than €1 back. And this is a great way to do that. Because other people's network is a really famous growth hacking example. So there's Airbnb who leveraged Craigslist for that. So they used, some people would say a scammy way, but they built an integration with Craigslist to get a lot of customers from there. But eventually Airbnb was stealing customers from Craigslist. But with the Dream 100, you're building a win-win instead of a win-lose. So that's why this is important. And the community owner wants you to be there, wants to promote you. So again, it's not short-term focused, but it's more long-term focused. So you can get more out of it. Yeah, it's really long-term, no quick win. And the second growth lever, which is really applicable, is the growth lever of a value ladder. And I always use the story about the time when I was starting out as an entrepreneur and I was not making that much money. But I could use some productivity tips. So I saw a course online, which was $150. And like with sweat on my hands, and I was really frightened of buying that because I didn't have that much money. But I bought that course and I did it, and it was really impactful on my life. Like my business got a good return out of it. And a couple of months later, that same guy offered me a course where for $1,000, you could learn how to become a consultant that makes $1,000 per month. And the crazy thing is that I spent that $1,000 already easier than that $150. Again, I did it, got a return out of it. And then he offered an online video course of 12 short videos for $7,500. But his promise was, if you understand this, you will make more than 6 figures per year as a consultant. And what was crazy about this dynamic is that the course where I had to pay $7,500, which was 50 times more expensive than the first course, I actually bought that course faster. And why was that? I was guided through a value ladder. I got in at a low price with a relative low value. And because I got value out of that, I went higher and higher and higher. And at the end, I spent more than $20,000 with that guy on online courses. So how can you apply this? Is ask yourself, what's the first product to get people in? What's my Trojan horse? How can I get people in? Because what you can do is, if you have the Trojan horse product, you can calculate the front end and back end revenue. Because there's money you make on day one, which is front end revenue. You make it on the front end, the first one. And then once you have that customer relationship, and you can DM them, you can actually make money in the first 30 days, in the second 60 days. And I have a lot of examples where companies were able to increase the amount of money they made on the customer 7 times within 60 days. What would that mean for your startup or scale up? If every euro they spend with you, you could 7x that within 60 days. And this model can really help you with that. Because you want to adjust this to your sales cycles. And again, make sure that you understand the financials, that you understand how much money you can spend to get somebody in. And what's important about a value ladder is you want to have a very high quality to price ratio to increase the desire. Why did I buy the next course? Is because it felt good. I had perceived quality. And because of that, my desire to buy the next one actually got up. You always want to have more expensive and cheaper products in your flow. And again, you want to find and understand the journey from starting to addiction. You want to understand how to map all these products together. And what I'm going to do with my book is I'm going to take this concept and try to get that to a higher level that is also really applicable for your context. Because what you want to have a touch-based value ladder. Because what you want to do is you want to connect the right combination of human and digital touch within your business. Because every business will have a digital layer, and you will use the principles of growth hacking. Because at the low end of your value ladder, so the cheaper products, you want to make them as digital as possible. And the more high end, so the more expensive they become, the more human touch. Because if you can guide them through that cycle and have a blended touch of human and digital, you will have the best return on investment. And what you'll see if you're a startup, once you're starting out, probably a lot of things that you need to do are human. For example, your sales conversation or your customer service. But the longer you exist, the more of those elements will become digital. So think about that, what that will mean for your business model if 20% of your human touch of today within 6 months could become digital. What ROI would you get out of that? And that's where I want to show in my new book how you can do it and how you can make that especially applicable for you within a startup. And then the third one, the third growth lever. So we had the first one, which was the Dream 100, and the second one, a value ladder. The third one is a revenue stress test. So how does this work? Is let's say tomorrow you would have 10 times the amount of customers in front of you. What would break in your business? What will you be able to handle? Because what you want to know is if your processes are scalable enough. Could you handle these amount of customers? But even more important, what are your bottlenecks? Do you understand where your business will break if it grows? Because if you do that, you can fix them. You can create scalable processes. Again, you want to write down how you do stuff. You want to recognize the pattern. You want to recognize where it breaks. Because if you do that, then you'll be able to grow faster. Think proactively about outsourcing or delegation. And so should you as a founder still do the same things as you did on day one? Or should you delegate things to your team or outside companies, agencies, for example? And think about automation. A great thing that I will show in my book is a chapter called Work Once and Get Paid Forever. And I'm a really big believer of that. If you do something once, make sure it gives you a return today, but also later on. And automation is a great tool to do that. Because for you, there is a window of opportunity. right now because you want to close the 2021 growth grab. Again, I said, how do you structure your strategy and teams so you're ready for extreme revenue growth? How do you make growth as easy as possible? And again, how can you reinvent yourself as easy as possible and as fast as possible? And what I try to do with this presentation is to give you the tools, the strategies, and the tactics to do that. But my main message is find your biggest growth lever. Ask yourself right now, what's the biggest opportunity in front of me? And how can I take that in an easy and fast way? And ask yourself, which 1% of the things that I can do will generate 50% of the impact? I've created a 30-day challenge to figure this out, which you can get at this site. For Podim, and I would normally, I've never done this before, but I'm giving a 30% discount. And I would love to connect with people on LinkedIn. So again, find that 1% growth lever, really get that into your head, focus on the biggest opportunity in front of you, go through your notes and really figure out, okay, where is the biggest chance for me? And if you want help with that, there's a nice challenge, which for you guys, I've got a discount code on. And please connect with LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, feel free to send me a DM because I always love to help people. And another thing, I'm still searching for great growth stories for my book. So if you think your story needs to be featured, also send me a DM because I would love to get you there. And now I would really love to hear questions from you, from the app. And I said, I'm really happy to help. So feel free to shoot.
Chris, thank you so much for this presentation. Once again, people who have been watching, there is a section in the app that's called Session Chat. Write your question. We have around 10 minutes for questions, so let's have a more of an interactive, engaging discussion. Chris, since we've been discussing a lot of these in this last close to 2 hours, tactics, strategies about growth and productivity and so on, I'm curious actually to hear how do you personally sort of like organize your own time? Like, what do you do to make sure that you're on top of things on a day-to-day basis? If you can share your personal self-management habits, I think it could be beneficial for everybody listening.
Yeah, no, I think definitely. So what I do is I plan everything in my agenda. So I don't have a to-do list. If I have to do a task, I plan it in my agenda. So for example, 30 minutes for email or a client call. That's one thing. I'm using a time tracker. So I'm tracking for each task how much time I spend on it. So I know that at this moment, I've spent 103 hours and 33 minutes on writing my book and 19 and a half hours on promoting it. So I know exactly where my time goes. Every Monday morning, I take 30 minutes to review where I spent my time last week, to see how my sales pipeline looks like, all together to see and where did I make impact with my clients, what worked and what didn't work. So I can write down what should I do better and what should I do less of. And by combining these things, so having my agenda clear, knowing where my time goes, but also taking a step back and understand how I'm doing stuff, that helps me in my quarterly planning, because I have a 25-year goal, and every quarter I set a theme, and based on that theme, I structure my quarter. So for this quarter, the biggest thing that I need to do is finish my book. So that needs to be done on July 1st. So I can talk about this for hours, but you probably also have other questions around that.
Oh, I gotta say, it's a really important point to emphasize on. Like everybody listening, it's really about being intentional about where your time goes. And I love that you're saying this thing about accounting. We don't talk enough about time accounting, right? Some people are good in accounting your budget, your money, but what about your time? Where is your time going? I spoke to a founder, the CEO of a company called FireUp. I mentioned them in my presentation. And he did something similar to you. So basically, he has a spreadsheet, and every hour, at the end of the hour, he has the spreadsheet broken down in 15-minute chunks. And at the end of every hour, he's going to ask himself, what did I do this hour? Where did my time go? And he told me, Stoyan, the first time I did that, it was really inconvenient, watching YouTube videos, right? Like he started finding where this is, and because he needs to keep himself accountable, he was actually much better into putting his attention on the things that really matter. So can you tell me about this? Why do you actually do that yourself? Why did you decide to be so pedantic in a way in terms of measuring where your time goes?
Yeah, I think that it really relates to a first principle which I shared, is functional laziness. Like I want to make sure that in the easiest way possible, I hit my goals. And I think that also a lot of people don't understand is that we do this way of time management, but it's actually a result of managing your energy. Because now I've learned which things give me energy and also make an impact on my business. I know that there's a very strong relationship between me talking to people and growing my business. And at the other end, I had a goal last quarter to do 5 social media posts per week. And I stopped doing that after 1 week. And the main reason was I spent more than 1 hour per social media post. And to be honest, they weren't that good. And I learned, okay, this is not something that I get energy off. The impact is okay, but it's not the biggest impact. So a thing that is also important is that a lot of people don't understand is that also making the decision of stop doing things. Because from a psychological perspective, it's really easy to add more stuff, but it's 10 times easier to stop doing stuff. But that has way more impact.
And how do you actually measure? You mentioned I'm measuring exact time, but like, is that you have a stopwatch? Do you have like an app, like a tracker? What's the actual sort of like a tool that you use?
So I have a tool called Toggle, which is a time tracking app. So I have different projects. So clients are projects, writing the book, but also activities that are important. I measure them. But what I also do, and this is something that a lot of companies can learn from, is that they set a growth goal and they hope to achieve it. But the first thing that I do once I've set a growth goal is figure out what would be the inputs that are necessary to hit that goal. If you want to have a six-pack, you need to go to the gym 5 times per week and eat healthy. The same principle applies for business. So if you want to grow your revenue with 500K in the next 3 months, like how many sales calls do you need to make? How many outbound emails? But if you see that every sales call will take you 1 hour and you need to make 500 calls, then you can already predict that it's not going to work. So I proactively stress test if the inputs that I think that I need to get to that goal are actually connecting to that goal. And in that way, I was able to stop doing things already before I started them because I could already predict it wouldn't work.
Everything is measurable and quantifiable to some extent, and it leads me to a story. We actually included it in the book, in Perform the Unsexy Truth About Startup Success. A company from the Baltics called Printify. So the founder, one of the founders, the CEO of the company, what they realized, one of the biggest learnings for him is they had some of these investors that were veteran entrepreneurs from Silicon Valley, like they've been doing stuff a lot. So they have this meeting with the advisor, investor, and he's like, okay guys, you're making 10 million euro in sales per year. Pretty good. How do we go to 3x, right? 30 million per year. All right. They come up with some strategies, ideas, try to quantify it backwards, because there's a goal, right? Now we have to change how we do things. They present him the stuff, he gives them feedback, okay, good, let's execute. The guy started executing. He's like, next time we meet, I want you to tell me how do we make 100 millions per year? When can you achieve it? How can we get there? cool, man. We're making 10 now, but like, let's go. So they sit down, they start coming up with strategies, get some advice, send him the pitch deck. They have a meeting. Again, he gives them feedback. Don't do this maybe, whatever. Okay, that's the plan. Go execute. The guy said, all right, but next time we meet, how do you do $500 million in sales? And the guy was like, at this point, we're like, what? Like, we're making 10 million? Like, well, all right, let's go. So they started playing with it. Like, they spent a couple of months, come up with this strategy, send him the pitch deck, and the guys look at it at the meeting, and he says, I like the ideas. Maybe you should also do this. I only have one question. Why so little? Why are we not aiming a little bit higher? You guys have all the resources, the infrastructure. Like, why don't you look higher? And he said at that point, every time we take a decision, we're thinking, why not aiming higher? Because, okay, we're making 10 million euro. You have a plan to the end of the year to make it 30. We have a good idea how to do 100. We actually have a plan for, the $500 million. It's measurable. You can break it backwards, and you can see the numbers. Actually, it's measurable. So I just love the fact that you mentioned that you have to quantify it. You can't just come up with these great goals, but you actually have to put some plan around it. Of course, everything is going to change. So I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this.
Well, the thing is, the first time I read about this principle was in the book from Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within. And he's talking about your reticular activating system. And what does it mean is that if you're looking for a certain type of car, let's say a red Volkswagen, the moment you've made the decision that you might be buying that car, you'll suddenly see them driving everywhere. And that same principle applies to growth. And I think the story you just shared is a story of activating that system to see opportunities on how to get there. Because the moment you start to understand how to take these steps, like your subconscious can take over and you actually know what to do. And this is something I've seen in a lot of growth scenarios where I'm in. I'm asking constantly the question, how could we 10x this? Because if you see the world in that way, then it actually becomes feasible. But not a lot of people are asking themselves that question. And the reason why is very simple, because if they have the answer, they actually have to do stuff. And that's not something that a lot of people want to do.
I love it. Chris, it's been such a brilliant presentation. I'm super happy we're having you here at Podim. And guys, if you're listening to this, you might want to check out Chris' book, the challenge he offered, and this offer that he gave. And just to top it up, if you contact me today, if you put me a DM on LinkedIn, I also have a special offer for you for all the Podim audience. So make sure to reach out, check out Chris out, go connect with him, ask him a follow-up question if you have any, if you were kind of shy to ask it here in front of us. And yes, we continue this afternoon. Thank you so much, Chris, for being with us. We continue this afternoon again with a very interesting session. So hopefully, guys, you have some good time, get some lunch, and we'll see you again in the afternoon.